not just about painting. It's a whole philosophical way of looking at everything that you do, and he was absolutely right about that.
That's correct.
He was a pretty smart guy.
Yeah,
Pretty smart
a
guy.
very smart guy.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Not well educated in the traditional way.
Well, he wasn't well educated formally, but he was one of the best read people I've ever encountered. I mean, he knew a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah, he read voraciously, always.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have one more image to look at, John, which you can tell us about from the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
Hang on, we're gonna see if this works again.
Well, don't show it.
I'm gonna show you the still first. We got it.
No, don't show it.
No. This is, you don't want to see the still?
I don't want to see this.
You don't want to see the still? Okay. Tell
No,
you.
no.
Okay. John, you're the director.
Thank you. No, because what he's talking about, what Craig's talking about, is just this very interesting thing that if you've seen the Blues Brothers, as a lot of people have, no one has ever commented on it. No one has ever said that's a trick shot. And the problem with it is, once you hear me tell the story, you will see it exactly for what it is. It's like, you know, the Bush presidency. Never mind that man behind the curtain. It's right there, you know. But if you don't know that, it's spectacular. And what he did was, when we were in Chicago filming the movie, we had unprecedented cooperation and access to do all these wacky things. And we were going to blow up a building. Actually, you know, not blow it up. We were going to, what's it called? Implode it, yeah. We had those Italian guys, the people who do that all over the country. And we had gotten permission to do it. It's the flop house that Elwood lives in, that he goes into that real sleazy hotel by the L train. And we had permission to destroy it. And so we shot everything up to that point. And then suddenly, this guy shows up saying, you know, I think there's a gas line under here. And I said, we paid a lot of money to discover there's no gas line. Well, it turned out it wasn't a gas line. It turned out it was bullshit. It was like, it's a long story, but it was corruption in the city of Chicago. In any case, shocked. But we couldn't blow it up. The last minute, we couldn't blow it up. So I had everything leading up to the explosion. I had everything after the explosion. I had no explosion. So I thought, well, we'll do a miniature, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. And at that time, you know, the budget was, I think we, you know, spent, I think, $25 million or something. And it was, I don't know if you remember, but
That's on the whole film.
the story, well, yeah, but we were finished. You know,
Yeah.
the story is that there was a thing called Hollywood Out of Control. That was the media story. And it was because within 2 years, these are the movies in production: Heaven's Gate, Apocalypse Now, 1941, Star Trek, and the Blues Brothers. All cost more than Cleopatra, which, you know, almost.
25 million.
Yeah, so it was Hollywood Out. Interestingly enough, 4 of those movies made a lot of money. But in any case, so we were like getting bad press, and the studio was freaking out, and it's like, but all I want to do is blow up a building, you know, how am I going to? So I thought, I'll ask Al Whitlock. He's clever, he'll know. Because I thought we'd do it with miniatures and stuff, and I go to Al. We showed him everything and discussed it, and he said, oh, I know what we can do. Do you have give me a frame that, you know, I said, what frame? Give me a frame that you could have the explosion in. But I haven't, okay. So I go back and look at all the coverage that we had shot in front of this building. And there's an earlier scene where it's across the street under the L tracks. You see the building. Carrie Fisher's car, you know, slate, action. Carrie's car pulls in, and we're shooting over her to the place. So there were, 21 frames between the slate and the car coming in. And I said, these are the only clear image I have of this building. Perfect, says Al, and he wouldn't tell me what he was going to do. And I asked Sid, oh, well, this is what he did. He took the frame, and okay, you see the first part, well, it's not really the shot, but there's 2 cars parked across the street. Then there's the building. He took the frame, and he blew it up. Huge. How big, Bill?
About 15. It was about 15 feet wide.
15 feet wide, which, of course, it looked terrible. And then he mounted it on foam cord. And I thought, gee, that looks terrible, Al. He said. So then they mounted on form, and they cut with an X-Acto. In fact, I remember Bill with his little X-Acto knife. They cut out the forward struts of the L train and the forward street, and then they cut out every window in the building. They put a little red piece of plastic, clear plastic, in every window in the building, and behind it they had some kind of powder. Well, it was like dust of some kind, a big E fan, and a huge thing of flash bulbs. And then Bill's got this camera that was the loudest camera. What kind of camera was that?
It was just a Mitchell high speed,
Going how fast?
going 120 frames a second.
It was so loud. And Albert calls me down to the stage. He says, "Watch this." So I go, "Okay." Okay, then what happens, Al? He says, "I think that'll work." And I said, "But look, big chunks of it didn't break apart. It looked terrible." He said, "No, it's fine." So this is it. They didn't do, that was it. That's what he did. I mean, he did nothing after it. And this is the shot as it appears in the movie.
Okay, let's show the shot.
Stand back. And no one has ever questioned that shot. I'm serious. No one has ever said anything. I mean, they totally buy it.
There is I'm trying to remember, the front plane was the foam core. The front plane was foam core. The back plane was built on some sort of very fragile plaster, like a very thin coat of very fragile plaster. And there was a little sort of tracery pattern of det cord on that plaster.
Extremely unimpressive in person.
Yeah. And we had a little naphtha bag behind there that was lit with the det cord, and that's all the fire that there was. And
Yeah, I want to stress there's no opticals in there. That's what they shot at high speed. That's it. And the illusion is complete. I mean, he was, as Jim said, really clever and practical guy.
and what he saw, and there's a tremendous lesson here for all of us here in the digital era. We are obsessed as visual effects folk. We are obsessed with simulation. Now, simulation will take you a long, long way. But sometimes the answer isn't simulation at all. Sometimes simulation is huge overkill. But to not be obsessed with simulation, you have to be able to see beyond that, as Albert did. And that is, you have to be able to intuit what something looks like.
Well, Albert's doing, he tells me, because they really were trying to shut them down, and they had just this nice stage, and Bill and Sid and Albert, that was the department. I was always going, it was a terrible thing. I was going, no, we're making this movie, and then we're making this other movie. And every so often you'd get a job from another studio, you know. And Hal Ashby called them for Bound for Glory. I remember Albert saying, "I'm doing a painting, it's going to be an enormous dust storm." And I said, "How are you going to do it?" He said, "Cotton balls."
and you saw it
saw
here.
it.
You saw it here. It's a famous shot, maybe one of the most famous shots in the history of visual effects. And that dust storm, that gigantic dust storm, was created with 4 discs of cotton, the largest of which was about like that. And again, being able to see beyond one of the first things that I had thought of, because of my background as a cameraman and some knowledge of visual effects. Well, maybe we can create a water tank effect. Maybe we can create clouds of dye in a water tank, and it will look like gigantic clouds of dust being blown across from the prairie. And Al said, "Well, maybe so, but I've got a much simpler idea that we should try first." And of course, the simpler idea worked beautifully. Again, requiring great technical detail. There was 38 passes or something like that to create that effect. But again, it was being able to see beyond simulation. And if you take anything away from here tonight, maybe that would be one of the more important things, is to just try to understand what something looks like.
Thanks very much, Bill. That we have to conclude our panel. We'd love to talk to.
Can I say one thing? Because
I'll never ask John.
Very quickly, I'll never have this opportunity in front of this crowd again. But you saw the painting from Colossus, the Forbin project.
Yeah.
Do you remember with the big computer? I just have to tell the story because of all you digital people out there. In 1969, I wrote An American Werewolf in London, and in 1971, I went to see John Whitney Sr. I went to school with Mark Whitney, his son, and John Whitney Jr.'s brother. And I went to see